Welcome back, everyone. The Do Now is asking you if you were alive 80 or so years ago, would you have worked to try and stop the Holocaust? You fought against Hitler and stop the murder of 6 million Jews, 4 million other people? Why not? Most people say yes, they would have stood against it and tried to do something. So my next question is, are you willing to go to war today to save the Uyghurs of Xinjiang? Most people would be a little bit more hesitant. Well, there's currently genocide going on right now in China. You have concentration camps. You have millions of people being rounded up, slave labor, torture, death of a group of people called the Uyghurs. These are Muslim, um, Central Asian people who have been imprisoned by the Chinese government because they are a different religion, they are a different culture, and they're not following the rules of China. Today we're going to be talking about China. We're going to look at some of the conflicts China has with its neighbors and some of the conflicts China has around the world. And this is a developing nation, but it's very far along the line. It's very close to being a developed country. So it has a strong economy, a very strong government, although it doesn't protect the rights of its people. And there's a lot of spatial inequality. Very ancient civilization, long history of big populations and conflict. It is an economic power. It is essential to the global trade system we have in place. A lot of products are made there, and it has a lot of influence around the world because of that. It's also a growing military power, and it's trying to use that power to get what it wants these days. The people of China have very little freedom, personal freedom, no freedom of speech, no right to vote, nothing like that. One of the most famous events in Chinese history isn't even known to the Chinese people. There was a protest back in the late 80s of college students demanding more rights and freedoms, wanting the freedom to speak, right to vote, all these different things. And the Chinese government sent in the military. And as they did that, most people left. A lot of people were killed and massacred. And there was one man who stood up. He stood in front of the tanks and stopped the military advance. And someone actually was able to get a picture and sneak the picture out of China and publish it. And it's just a very famous picture of people standing up against an authoritative government, an oppressive government. No one's really sure what happened to this guy or who he is. He was eventually arrested and disappeared. Now, China has expanded its power over the years. There used to be a country right here called Tibet. It's a very mountainous region. It's the head of a very religious people, Buddhist, led by the Dalai Lama here. And China had invaded this country and conquered it for its resources and was very oppressive to the people there. China has multiple attempts to wipe out religion in their country, completely dissolve all religion. And they're often very brutal to their own people. Anyone who fights back, widespread murder and killing and all those things. They're also very controlling of the media. The media only say what they want the people to hear. So only certain things are allowed to be said or done in China on TV. And weirdly enough, Winnie the Pooh is banned in China. You are not allowed to watch Winnie the Pooh. You're not allowed to have any pictures of Winnie the Pooh. The reason why is because people kind of joke that the leader, President Xi, looks like Winnie the Pooh. And that obviously makes him look foolish and it's embarrassing. So he has banned Winnie the Pooh. But he's also banned any criticism of himself. He has banned any one questioning China or what they are doing or anything pro-American or pro-Western Europe, anything like that. China also lives under constant surveillance and have cameras constantly watching people. They have facial recognition to see what you're doing at all times. They give out what they call a social credit score, meaning based on your behavior, you get a grade from the government. And if you have a good grade, well, that means you can get a good job and like loans and buy stuff. If you get a bad grade, you are forced into poverty. you get really bad, obviously, you just get arrested and tortured and disappeared. Here's an example of that um, facial recognition and everybody's score. You can see that a lot of these people are not getting great scores. This guy is um, trying to uh, monitor their people and control their people. Hong Kong, which is down here as a city, used to be owned by Britain for a long time, and then it was handed over back to China under the agreement that Hong Kong got to be its own self-governed city, meaning the Chinese government couldn't tell it what to do. Um, Hong Kong has lots of freedom, lots of rights. It's very developed, much like an American city almost, but the Chinese government is trying to take control. And there have been lots of protests because the Chinese government has been arresting people and cracking down on freedom of speech. And a lot of these protests happened right before COVID, and China used COVID as an excuse to lock all these people up. Protests against it have stopped, and Chinese government has taken control of Hong Kong and has started taking away all rights and freedoms. China is also very influential in pop culture. They have a big influence over the NBA. They're one of the biggest customers of the NBA. They watch a lot of basketball, and the NBA does a lot of what China wants them to. And restricting freedom, there was an NBA player who criticized the Chinese government, and he was essentially kicked out of the league. You can see some examples of Hollywood movies being altered. China has a lot of issues when it comes to racism of Africans and African Americans. You can see that in these videos. Economically, China is loaning money to lots of countries in an attempt to gain control. So they'll loan money to, say, like Nigeria, and then when Nigeria can't pay it back, China will come in and just take land and take property from them. They've also expanded into the South China Sea. This is one of the big military conflicts with the United States, is who kind of controls this area. A lot of shipping routes go through here. For China to control this would mean the U.S. and our allies would be at a disadvantage. Last year, China sent a spy balloon over the United States to spy on us. And so there's a lot of spying and conflict between the U.S. and China. Our main focus today is to talk about the island of Taiwan, which is this orange island right off the coast of China. Now, Taiwan used to be part of China. It used to be one country, and then they had a civil war where the current government in China was fighting the old government, and obviously the Chinese government's going to win. The communist government's going to win and control. Well, the old government's going to flee to Taiwan. They're going to leave their capital and set up a new one here. And then the Chinese communists were not able to conquer this island. So both the Chinese and the Taiwanese people see themselves as Chinese, historical Chinese, and they both want to be controllers of both lands. They both want to control China. Currently, though, China wants to conquer Taiwan, and they refuse to accept anyone who considers Taiwan its own country or that has any rights or freedoms. They believe it's theirs, and they want to conquer it. So our big question today is, should the U.S. continue to support Taiwan against China? Your activity today is to read, annotate some reading, and then answer some questions.